Hi, I'm Matt Mulvaney from Explorer. In a series of how-to guides for Oracle Forms developers, in this video I'll be showing you something maybe unfamiliar to a Forms developer, which is the Apex session state. So I'll be showing you how to interact with the session state, how to set values and how to get values, and I'll show you how to do this through submitting the page and also through dynamic actions. A page submit is a different concept for an Oracle Forms developer, and some consideration must be made when developing an Apex application. A quick way of explaining what a page submit is that it pushes the values from all the page items on the screen into session. So what's a session? Well, a session is acquired when you log into Apex and you can see your session ID from the browser URL here. Once the user logs out, the values from the session are lost. The session also holds information about the results from authorization schemes and arrays of values called Apex collections. Apex processes, including those that are run before the page loads and those that run when the page is submit, always works on session rather than the on-screen values. So if I edit the page, you'll be able to see a before header process. So under pre-rendering, on page 1 I've got this before page loads process. So I'm setting a text item P1 set before header, which is the first item, to the word Explorer. So when I run that, the screen item is populated with Explorer and the session is set as well to the word Explorer for that item on that page. A page can be submitted using an Oracle provided JavaScript API, or more commonly using a button. Buttons, for example, can be called create or update. These both would submit a page and not usually have code directly attached to it in the way a Forms has a when button press trigger. So a submit is usually made with a submit request, which is basically a word or a short phrase which accompanies the request. If a button is used to submit the page, it is normally the name of the button itself. So using conditions on page processes, the developer can detect which button is clicked and therefore run the create process when the create button is pressed. So this would typically run an insert statement, or I can run the update process when the update button is pressed, usually running an update DML against the database. So we'll inspect these buttons. So the create button here is going to submit the page, as is the update button that also submits the page. And in my page processes, I have two processes, one called create process and one called update process. Now both of these pieces of code for this example have a null PL/SQL code, so they don't actually do anything. But I do have a success message. This one is called update process and this one is called create process. This create process fires when the create button is pressed, and this update process runs when, not so when the update button is pressed, but when the request is the word update. So normally each button submits the page with a request value of the name of the button. So in this case, update. So if you run the page now, I can put some values in here. So Matt Mulvaney, and press create. So the page process has identified that the create button has been pressed and runs a create process with the success message of create process. I can try the update button. So when I push the update button, the session is updated with these screen values and the update process is identified because the request value is the word update. Now having values in session is quite good because I can move around my application, clicking on page 2 for example, and then move back to page 1 and it retains these values. It retains them from session. If I was to type in a different first name Matthew and not push it into session, but move on to page 2 and navigate back to page 1, I've lost those changes. So I need to submit into session any changes. Then as I navigate around the application and come back to this page, these values have been retained. I can see the session by clicking session in the developer bar. Then I can see first name and last name has been populated with the values that I supplied earlier. Another way of submitting values into session is using a JavaScript API. If I just quickly edit that, you'll see that I'm not submitting the page here, but I'm redirecting to a URL. And in the URL, I'm just going to call Apex Submit. So it is an alternate way of submitting the page. I can actually clear the cache as well, so I'll clear the cache for this page 1. And the screen values have gone, and the cache has also been reset. You notice that set before header is still present, because when I reset the cache, the page loaded again, and the before header process loaded, which set the Word Explorer into this item here. So following a page submit, the control is returned to the current screen and the page is redrawn. So this would normally contain a user's updates. The developer may also use a branch after processing to redirect to a different URL after the page has been submitted. For example, you might be using this page to update some personal details, and after that you want to return to a report page to see those details rather than staying on the same page. So advanced developers may use dynamic PL/SQL actions to develop parts of a page without a full page submit. However, should these be used, the developer still has to submit and return values to and from the session. So I'll demonstrate that on page 3. So I have a calculator here. So I'm going to type in some values. And this button adds the 2 values and puts the result in here. You've noticed that there's no page refresh, there's no submit and redraw of the page. This has been done through dynamic actions. So if I edit this button here, add the values, you see I've got this first and second value and this add button, and the result goes into P3 result. If I expand that, I have a click dynamic action, and this runs this piece of PL/SQL code. So the result is the first value add the second value. Now to see the content of these values, I need to quickly add these values to session. So I list them down here in a comma separated list. So I have first value, comma second value here, and the result is returned into this text item here as P3 result. If I click on the session, I can see that it's worked within the session, and I can see my first value, my second value, and the result. In summary, using the Oracle session state within Apex is a different concept for an Oracle Forms developer, although one which is very powerful and provides lots of benefits, such as retaining values whilst the user navigates between screens, and also you can access any session item value from any page. For more information, including our blog articles, visit www.explorer-development.uk.com.